Walk, walk. There are so many things going on around. You must take heed. It's been written and prophesied about, so you must believe. Not everything that glitters is gold. Pay attention as it's been told. Join us every Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, with Brother Yusuf as he tackles and breaks down current events, current news, and politics, and the Islamic Ummah. Please join us, streaming on all major platforms. Channel Sunnah Followers.
Everything that we talk about here can be verified, can be looked up online. So again, welcome you guys who are joining us, seeing me for the first time. So let's, I guess we're going to do it this week. We will roll with those questions. So could someone please, question number one was dealing with Microsoft. I need to get some clarification because I've not heard this, but I am familiar with Microsoft and do have some things to add to this. What exactly do they do? They banned the word, you said, or they banned the search? I mean, what exactly went on there for the brother or sister who submitted that question?
The person was on the other website, so they can't answer you right now.
So what was the question she had to write down exactly about them banning this word?
So they banned Palestine?
From being typed? On what application? I just wanted to have some clarification because I have not heard this story. But erasing history is something these people are very good at doing. I just want to have a little bit of clarification.
It just says that it's banning the Palestine internet emails.
They're banning emails coming from there?
He specified Microsoft, I think.
In certain chat.
Okay, they banned whereas any words, any emails or words containing Palestine or Gaza, any words that include Palestine or Gaza, any emails that have any of those words will be banned. They're not going to allow any emails to come through Microsoft that has Palestine or Gaza in them at all. If the email has the word Gaza or the word Palestine, it's just going to be kicked off the server. It's not going to be sent at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's again.
In fact, I'm gonna put it up on the screen for you. I'm gonna pull it up. I can pull it up. Hold on. I'm gonna pull it up because I just saw
with Bill Gates, obviously, nothing is surprising. I've chronicled him here briefly and in detail over the past few months. Anyone who's familiar with the COVID scam, Bill Gates was one of the cameramen during that whole charade. His population reductions he's talked about for decades, his poisonous vaccine programs. I mean, Bill Gates even went as far as to try to fund research to block the sun because the whole planet's going to spontaneously combust because of our carbon emissions, right? And we need to block the sun. He was trying to get funding for said research. So anything that comes out of that outfit, I mean, this is as globalist, wicked a corporation as you're ever going to find in internal emails. So yeah, it seems like from that headline here, what they're trying to do is just simply get the word removed, from the English language. And this is a subtle form of mind control and brainwashing here, because after the first few people get angry about it, 2 to 3 years later, they're hoping it just starts to just eradicate that word from the human language. These guys love to erase history. An example of what they've done similar is funny. We're going to talk about race a lot tonight because of the South African topic. They made it to where the word white was not capitalized, but yet black, Asian, Hispanic, the rest of them are. If you want to type brown person, it would be capitalized. If you want to type black, it would be capitalized. But if you want to type white, it would be lowercase. And again, we know these people. It's not covered what they've said about Caucasian people. I've got the Zionist quotes. I've read them out loud here with the source. Total genocide, eradication of European people. And you got to start by just taking away their dignity. And we see that done all around. It's the same thing with Palestinians. They want the Palestinians eradicated. They want them off the land. And of course, they want their history to be erased. So it's just one brick at a time. And not surprising by any means that we would see a company like Microsoft. And I want to do a series. I haven't had time lately. Life has been hectic, about controlling Muslim dollars again. I talk about that a lot on here. That all of us, and not even if you're not even Muslim, just any person of decency, the amount of money that we blindly throw at these multinational corporations who do not have our best interests at heart. It's like giving a guy a gun, loading the gun for it, putting all the bullets in the clip, and then giving and say, hey, kill me and my family. I mean, that's basically what you're doing when you're patronizing these businesses. And you've got a lot of people in our community who are coming out and making fun of boycotts and saying boycotts are haram and all this nonsense. But again, would you load the bullet for the guy, hand the guy the gun, open up your door to your front house and say, hey, can you please kill me and my family? To a madman. No one obviously would be sane if they would do such a thing. How is it any different what we are doing when we are continuing to use businesses who promote racism against all peoples, we're going to talk about later, with a country that's doing such things, who are basically promoting negative things towards our religion, to morality, to God, and we just continue to give them our money. I mean, it's just, or they're poisoning us. That's one of the real interesting ones, is that if you talk about boycotting Coca-Cola because of Palestine or whatever, that's a good thing, obviously, but you should be boycotting Coca-Cola because they're destroying your health also. It's two birds with one stone. You're going to get a health benefit also from doing that, but you're, again, not going to see these phony social media influencers telling you the truth. They're just going to ridicule the boycotts because they know a lot of their dirty pockets are lined up in these businesses. They got investments in these businesses. They own these businesses, or their rulers that they love so much own these businesses. So they don't want to talk that way. They don't want real solutions. But these companies, man, it's unreal what they're funding and what we're actually giving them the money to do. And this seems to be no different. I have to be a little bit more familiar with it, but I'm not surprised. I mean, they'll just ban Palestine or lowercase it like they did the term white in their little chat programs as well, to try to, again, take away from these people's history, their culture, their land, their, rights, their natural God-given rights to live in the land of their ancestors. Unfortunate, So, yeah, that's what I have to say on that one. If we can move on to question number 2, we'll get back to that. I hope I answered it to the best of my ability, inshallah. And we'll go to question number 2, Sister Layla, or whoever has access to those questions.
Yeah, Trump's meeting with South Africa, the South African leader. What happened with that? That's what they want to hear talk about.
Absolutely. I've followed South Africa for a long time. I got to preface this for those of you who don't know me. I disassociated myself from a lot of the community a year ago, and this issue was one of them. People in the Muslim community, particularly Arabs, no surprise there, were endorsing South Africa. And many times I saw these in social media posts. It was going on in the masjid here as well. And that's basically like saying to anyone who is a white European Muslim, which there's quite many of us, the media doesn't like to show that, but we're out there, that we're supporting a government that wants you dead. Imagine the same thing if you had Muslim groups supporting, a group that wanted all blacks or Africans dead, or all Arabs dead. And that would never go anywhere. But it was so just normalized for people to see this as some kind of a good fight. And I mean, South Africa, again, when you talk about racism, if someone dislikes me or dislikes, someone who happens to be of African descent or Asian descent, because of who they are, the color of their skin, the way they look, they feel superior, there's nothing we can do about that, obviously. That's a disease within that person. You may miss a best friend. You may miss some of the best people you ever met. That's just, again, a disease in there, and that's not a concern. But when you start having power over those people, to oppress them, to hold them down, to inflict tyranny on them, or bloodshed, or murder, or death, take their own lives because of your racism, that's where we have to draw a line. And like I talked about here in America when I chronicled slavery and all the hidden, aspects of that, and how that institution was, obviously inhumane. And we have the same thing going on here. And a lot of people, I've followed this issue for over 20 years and I've seen the progression of this. A lot of these farmers, they have to live in houses that they compartmentalize with iron rods so they can protect their families from brutal murder and rape. And for years, we've seen CNN, the lying media, we've seen all this just turn a blind eye to this because, again, the Zionists want to commit genocide against European people. They don't care who does it as long as someone's doing it. And I was actually, for the first time, I could say in a long time, happy with a president who sat in that office for actually taking these guys to the cleaners and showing the world what people like myself have known for quite some time. I mean, imagine the outcry if you had a political figure in the United States singing a song about going into Black or African American neighborhoods and killing them, and having massive amounts of people celebrating and cheering that. That would just obviously be condemned. Someone would be arrested for a hate crime, for inciting hate speech. Imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. You see this, I mean, would be condemned internationally. But because the Zionists, it should be, of course, as you see the Zionist media, no. They say, oh, no, it's not really happening. They've only killed 10,000. What's the big deal, you know? But these people were directly targeted by the color of their skin. You are seeing people being denied access to education, being denied access to resources and opportunity, and just safety and decency because of the color of their skin. That regime needs to fall. And that regime has been propped up by the Zionists. If anyone ever wants to go and really go down that rabbit hole and see what's really going on there, it's about transferring the wealth of the land, the resources that were owned previously by some of the white people who inhabited that land for quite some time, and handing it over to the Zionists and privatizing everything, as you see what they've done in most Western nations. That was the reason the Zionist media came out against the apartheid system. I'm not saying the apartheid system was good, but the Zionists were always trying to make it seem like they have good moral interests. Oh, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. But then when you really go in there, you are going to see what the real motives were for that. It had nothing to do with the benefit of the African people who lived in that land. So this is a very controversial issue. South Africa is a loaded subject. I mean, was this history founded righteously? No, absolutely not. But where wrongs in the past do not get corrected by wrongs in the future. We're supposed to be living in a better day and a better age. And we've seen that people have changed and people have gotten better. Race relations were on their way to being the best they've ever been before the agitators in the media start trying to flare it up again. I saw when I was growing up in the 90s, I mean, things were a lot better than they are now. I mean, less people got offended. We used to joke amongst our differences, about our differences amongst each other, and we were friends. I mean, I noticed a different climate in the 90s, early 2000s, and what has been created in recent times. And they're trying to fan these flames of tribalism, you know, again. Obviously, as Muslims, we're against this. But we have a right to speak up anytime we see people being oppressed. And when I saw members of our community endorsing this government a year ago, I was just so offended and disgusted, but not surprised, because that's what these people do. They have no concern. They wonder why Islam has a white problem, because it does. A lot of white people, more so probably than any demographic group, reject Islam before they even know anything about it. And I said to one of the people who's doing dawah, I said, imagine you do dawah and you bring a guy into this masjid. You're like, okay, let's get him into Islam, let's educate him. He starts going on his own social media and he starts looking up, what are Muslims promoting? Oh, they're endorsing South Africa. Great. That means basically they're supporting a government that wants to kill me just because of the way I was born. How is that person going to feel? How is that person going to say? And we have to condemn it on all sides. I mean, when you have power over someone and a disdain for them based on where they come from, that is dangerous. And we've seen it throughout history. All groups have oppressed other people, as we talked about a few months ago. Not one group is guilty of racism and everybody else is absolved. No. I mean, the West abolished slavery before everyone else, but yet we don't hear that. Saudi Arabia didn't abolish slavery until 1956. We constantly hearing cries about how horrible Saudi Arabia's treatment was much, much worse. If anyone wants to do their research on that, that's an interesting find. But again, you know, it's just how everything is framed. You know, it's framed to create hate and division for someone the Zionists have openly stated they want to genocide, and that being European white people. And we have to eradicate racism everywhere we find it. I mean, again, if I walk up to someone, I like to be Muslim first, but if I meet someone for the first time, they don't know I'm Muslim. I have a beard, but so many other people, Harley Davidson drivers have a beard. That's not necessarily a feature unless they see me actively praying. You know, the first thing, you know, they're going to think, oh, he's a white man. And we're always going to be judged by the color of our skin. So we have to remove any of this type of hatred, especially when it comes to institutional, you know, racism and discrimination against people from an institutional or governmental levels. So I was happy Trump did this. Is his motives genuine? Don't know. Again, we will find out as time will show. But at least it was something in the right direction of kind of raising awareness for what these governments are doing. Now, somebody asked me a question just there. I saw it pop up at the bottom of the screen. Can anyone see that? I don't have a way of seeing that. What that brother or sister asked me. Let me see if I can see it from here.
Can you guys read it? Talking about how Israelis feel it's propaganda in Chinese social media.
So they were saying that there was an influencer talking about Israeli propaganda now in Chinese media? Is that the question?
Yes, it just basically Chinese influencer talking about Israel failed its propaganda in Chinese social media. That's just what they wrote.
Yeah, that's a good point, because one advantage that these Zionists have had is that they've lived among European society for quite some time, and they were able to blend in. You can go and just, look at all the plastic surgery a lot of these people have had over the years to change their appearance. They changed their style of dress, and they blended in very, very well here. So for years, they were able to present themselves. And you'll notice one thing the Zionists often like to do. They will say they're white when it's convenient. And then when they're bashing white Caucasian people, they'll say, oh, no, I'm Jewish. I'm not white. And they'll play that card back and forth however it works. But if they go to Asia, they're not going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to be like a cockroach across a white rug. They're going to stand out. It's a lot harder for them to spew their propaganda in other countries. In the West, they've even used Christianity very flawlessly. And they've gotten the Christian institutions infiltrated for the new Christo-Zionism, that we've seen over the past few decades. Where now Christian pastors are teaching that it's a duty to support Israel, it's a duty to donate your money to Israel. It's a duty, you're going to be on God's side pretty much if you do that. But it's a lot harder for them to get away with that again, in China or the Far East, because it's going to become too obvious and too transparent. And if you don't have that, like when I grew up, I've talked about this in a lecture I did about 1.5 to 2 years ago when I talked about America's greatest ally. And I was talking when we grew up, as kids in the 1980s, I'm 45 years old. And I remember, the whole narrative I was taught was, oh, little tiny Israel. They're like the David with the Goliath with a slingshot. They're this tiny little underdog, and everything they're doing is self-defense. They're a force for freedom in the region. And you hear those things repeated so many times. As a kid, you just blindly accepted it. But then when I grew up, obviously, I questioned things. And I was able to find out the little David miracle or whatever narrative, was not correct. We're talking about a state with a budget in billions of dollars, getting high-tech weaponry sent from all around the world. They're anything but an underdog. In fact, they are the heavy favorite, militarily. And if you guys have watched my Palestine series, if those are new to me, I recommend you do it. It's about 8 hours. And we go through from the beginning in the 1900s all the way up into the 1970s. And you would be able to see how little of an underdog Israel really was and how much of an advantage they had from their international support and the cash they were raising and the weapons they were getting delivered from the beginning. It was never a fair fight. And most people, if you don't have that propaganda, just common sense and observation is going to tell you that's the case. Only in the West, where we've had this blanket thrown over our head for so many years, do people even believe opposite of that. So their propaganda is not going to fly, as well as it has here. It just isn't, for a variety of reasons. And that's why the international community has pretty much always condemned it. The only reason they haven't stopped it is because if you stop it, you got to deal with Israel's, security guard, the United States of America and Great Britain, and you're going to have a potential world war on your hands, which is obviously more of a threat to the stability of China and other nations. So you've seen this be tolerated for so long, but it's starting to get to where movements inside of the West now are turning on Israel, turning on the tyranny. And once that happens, the security guard is gone, and they're on their own. And hopefully we'll be the next stage sooner rather than later. Ready for the next question, sis? Sister?
We're still waiting for any questions.
She had 5, and I've answered a couple of them already, and someone was told to write them down and then read them out.
Okay, the third one is U.S. and Iran nuclear talks.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been an issue. We talked about this last week too, that went on for quite some time now. It's been kind of an excuse to attack or invade Iran, which Israel sees as one of the last real threats to them. Iran does not have a Rothschild-controlled bank. That's a very important matter there. They must. If you don't have a Rothschild-controlled bank, you're targeted for extinction. And you can go down the list and see all the different people, or different nations, I'm sorry, not people, who have not had a Rothschild-controlled bank and what has happened to them. And Iran has been marked for destruction. They're raising civil unrest there now. A lot of anti-Islam secularists are taking over the public discourse there. We had the woman recently, in Iran who walked down the school campus. I think she was basically naked. I mean, not wearing her underwear. And the feminism and all that disease, they're trying to break Iran down from within because invading Iran would be a disaster internationally. So many people who supported Trump, I've talked to them. The one main issue they said, if Trump goes to war with Iran, we're going to turn on it because this is not what we voted Trump to be in there for. Why is Iran being singled out here? Why is Israel allowed to have nuclear weapons? Why is India allowed to have nuclear weapons? Why is Pakistan then allowed to have nuclear weapons? If Iran can't, but all their neighbors can, there's no, fairness, in that. Iran has never aggressively attacked any nation in its modern history. I talked about this last week, that there used to be a little chart, and on the left side, you had the United States, and on the right side, you had Iran. And on the left side was all the wars the United States had been in since 1861. And the columns were filled on both sides. But then you had the wars that Iran had been in. There was only one. It was a war that was started by the United States when they were arming both sides in the Iraq conflict there. A lot of stuff was exposed there with Oliver North's testimony of a conflict between Iraq and Iran that was funded and promoted by the West. So, I mean, we don't see any history of Iran being aggressive at all. And yet they are being singled out because, again, they are someone who Israel wants to target. They've got to be a part of the grid. They've got to be a part of the system. They've got to be up to their necks in debt. They've got to be a part of the Jewish monetary system. And if you're not, you've always been targeted for destruction. So that's why we're seeing all of this. They want regime change there. They've wanted it for a long time. They want a secular puppet control regime that's going to be very Western sympathetic, like you see in the rest of the Gulf. Those type of states, that's what they want in Iran. Islam will be there, but it'll be cosmetic again. It's like wearing a suit, to a Muslim, as we talked about with Muslim 2.0 at length. So again, that's what the aim is. You're going to have Islam still. They're not going to do that. It's too obvious to get rid of Islam completely, but they're just going to secularize things. So you're going to have the same amounts of adultery, same amounts of partying and consumerism and all the other diseases and vices of the West, but instead of someone being like, oh, do you believe in God? Yeah, I believe in Jesus, like you see here. They're like, oh, yeah, I believe in the messenger, I believe in the law, but I got a beer in my hand because I'm open-minded. And, that's what we're already seeing in the Gulf. And you're going to see that continue to spread. That's what they want for Iran. They want the feminism, all the other broken up of the family, destruction of the family, the homosexuality, LGBTQ, ZYX, all that usual stuff. All that's being planned. And we're already seeing it in Saudi. We've been seeing it in Dubai and most of UAE. And we're going to continue to see it spread. But yes, of course, Iran has a right to defend themselves as any sovereign nation does and should be allowed to possess nuclear weapons.
Okay, the other issue here, too, that they brought up is the issue of the judge blocking the Trump admin from revoking Harvard's enrollment of foreign students.
Do I agree with revoking foreign students? Absolutely. Do I agree with the reason that they did it? No. Our colleges are insanely expensive. We pay more for education pretty much than anybody around the world. If you talk to anyone from Europe, If you talk to anybody from the Gulf, I mean, colleges are not a sort of debt slavery. Colleges are an opportunity to grow. Colleges should be based on your IQ, your test scores, your academic achievements. We obviously want our best and brightest in the engineering fields. We want our best and brightest in the best writers in the writing fields, the best engineers in the engineering fields, the best people who aspire to be doctors to be in those fields, and to be able to go there as part of a public service like university is supposed to be. But part of our college scam is the enrollment of foreign students. Because these foreign students are getting funded a lot of times by their governments, they pay tuition, they pay out-of-state tuition. Huge expenses. Now, Harvard is a private university which already has insane amount of tuition to begin with. But what we are seeing is valuable seats in these top-notch universities, which should be going to Americans, are going to people from other countries. And this is suicidal. What nation does these type of things? You should have these institutions here for Americans first. Whatever seats are left over, go to foreign who qualify. The end. And banning that is a good thing. But the reason they're doing it, I don't agree with, which of course is the anti-Israeli, anti-Zionist stuff that's going on these campuses. Because it's kind of backfired on them. They've been feeding this monster of liberalism for so long. These people never had a problem when women were taking off their bras and burning them on the college campuses, being promoted by the left. They never had problems when the college professor said whiteness was a disease. We need to kill all white people. There's a white guy that said this too. Zionists have done it as well. No outcry over this. Anytime the leftists have done LGBTQ parades or events in these campuses, no one ever cried foul. No one ever said we've got to shut it down. So the leftists kept growing and growing, and naturally some on the left adopted the Palestine cause. Because the leftists, their brain doesn't go much farther than Jews are white and Arabs are brown, white man bad. That's really how simple it is, the thinking to a lot of these people. They don't realize the Zionists are anything but traditional white or Caucasian, and Palestinians come in all colors of the rainbow. So it's not a white-brown issue, but to the average, kooky leftist, it is. And they started adopting this issue toward the late 90s, and it's just grown. I've seen it grow in real time. And all of a sudden, you started seeing anti-Israeli things mentioned in these rallies. And that's when they're like, oh, no. Free speech ain't good anymore. It was fine to do the burning of the bras. It was fine to parade naked. It was fine to call killing white people. That was all okay. It was fine when Theodore Adorno was publishing books back in the 60s saying that you should kill your father because he's an authoritarian and he's holding you back. That All that Jewish stuff was okay. All that rhetoric was completely fine. But, now, no. We can't have free speech anymore. This has gone too far. And it's comical. And we've already talked about on here before about some of the people that were targeted for deportation, who were foreign students who were out there doing these things. And again, free speech should not be banned from anyone. Free speech should be everywhere. If you're allowed free, as long as you're not calling on people to murder someone, which none of these anti-Zionist people are doing. They're just calling for a Palestinian state, an end to the war, and all those things. Outside of inciting violence and encouraging people to be murdered, killed, or denied their natural right to pursue their destiny, free speech is supposed to be that. Free, open, available, right to protest, right to voice dissent. And now that's not allowed anymore. They're trying to use economics the same way they do it with your job. If you come out for a multinational corporation, they tell you, okay, you got to follow the corporate rules. They'll give you a code of conduct. And the code of conduct tells you things you can and cannot say. And now you belong to that company. So do you still have free speech on the street? Absolutely. But you also have the right to be fired now, for what you post on social media or what you're engaged in, because the company will say you're a representative of them. So, they've been trying to get around free speech laws for quite some time. This is just them getting a little bit more direct, but it's just funny. You go back and just, again, look at every protest that's happened in universities over the last few decades. They never said a peep until this. And now all of a sudden they want to revoke Harvard's, right to do this because of what's going on. Like I said, the real issue is we should be doing this, but we should be doing it for a completely different reason. That's to get Americans in these universities, bring down the cost because a lot of these universities that they're letting foreign students in are state universities. You can go to places in North Carolina, where I was from, North Carolina State, still with foreigners at this point. And there's so many people that get turned down who are American, who belong in those universities before the foreigners. I guarantee you go to any of the countries that those people who are here are from, you'd see the exact same. They would not be allowing any of us to go there. It would be for their own people. But yet we are expected to open up everything to the world and let the world take our resources while our own people suffer and not get any benefits. We're Americans, and it should be American first, first and foremost.
Okay, the last question centers around what your take on this whole P. Diddy trial situation. P. Diddy and all that's going on with this, and all that he supposedly has done in this industry to teenagers and women and all of that. What's your take on all of this?
Yeah, P. Diddy was not surprising. I'd heard homosexual allegations against him going back to the late 90s and early 2000s. And we are really living in an amazing age where law is he's breaking down a system. He's dismantling it. Truth is being shown in levels I could never have imagined. I mean, fringe conversations that were happening in the 2000s that got you called crazy. Now people are like talking about this in the coffee table in the break room of companies. These things are becoming so known now. And I think this is just another one of the big unveiling of people need to know who these people are. Who are these people you've been idolizing and worshiping? And that's, again, let's be honest, that's what a lot of Americans and people in the West have been doing for decades. They've been putting these people on pedestals, worshiping them, believing these people are better than you because what? They can sing, they can make some rhymes, they can dance. I mean, most of these activities, if you took them away, the society wouldn't miss a beat. I mean, these are not as valuable as truck drivers and doctors and, people who are building your houses, plumbing and your electrical wiring, police officers, firefighters. These are the real heroes. These are the real movers and shakers in society. But the Zionists have been able to convince us that these clowns over here who are goofball entertainers are somehow basically to be, admired and, worshipped and whatnot. And what we're seeing here is what they've been doing for decades again, is that it's an induction system. And a lot of times, if you want to get up, you have to do favors for the people above you. P. Diddy had a lot of power, and with a lot of power comes a lot of wealth, connections, and money, bulletproof mentality that you feel you can do whatever you want. People like Justin Bieber, from what I've heard, were sexually assaulted, most likely by this man to get his career to where it was. So it's a way of selling your soul. You give him the sexual favor, and in turn, he'll make you a star, because they can make literally anyone a star. I mean, like that. I mean, the music has gotten so bad, it proves this point every time you hear a radio station. It used to be 30 to 40 years ago. Now, granted, I'm not condoning Muslims go out and listen to this music. But the music, if you go back to the 70s, the 60s, and the 80s, the music actually had talent. The people actually could sing. They actually had some skill, at least you could say, okay, well, there's something there. But what we've seen in the last 20 years is it's just going right straight off a cliff. These people have literally no talent. None. They can't even sing or hold a key. They auto-tune everything. Everything's done through machines. If you hear these people sing in a concert, they're singing off a tape recorder. There was an act in the 1980s named Milli Vanilli who had lost their career because they got caught lip syncing. And now all these people are lip syncing, and no one has a problem with it. It's like they have zero amount of talent. These are just guaranteed high-income positions of influence. And when you have this kind of influence, the Zionists cannot allow for someone to go up there and tell the truth. They can't allow that. That could be too damning. That could wake a lot of people up. So you've got to make sure that you have dirt and you have something on them. It's like very similar to a gang initiation. A gang just can't let any normal person off the street into it, because then you could be infiltrated by the police. You could be brought down really quickly. So what does the gang do? Gangs do initiations. They have you go out and kill a random person. They have you go out and commit some kind of heinous crime for two reasons. Number one, They know you're not a cop at that point. Number two, if you ever try to turn on the gang, they've got dirt on you. And they can just simply leak that dirt out, and your life is going to be behind bars or the death penalty. So it's very similar here. You collect dirt, get them to do dirty sexual favors for their master, their handler, whatever you want to call it. Now that person's in a position of prominence. They know if they ever go against the system, all this data is going to come out. So I'm sure there's mountains of videotapes, because this is what they do. This is what we found with down at Epstein Island. They were filming these things. They were getting all this information on these politicians having sex with 12-year-old girls, raping them, harming these children, and all of these things. These children they have kidnapped, disappeared. Over, can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it's a huge number. Above 100,000 children missing every year, unreported, never found, ending up in places like that for our politicians to perform all kinds of heinous and just debaucherous acts, with, and then they've got it all on videotape. So that politician ever doesn't go in line, hey, wait, buddy, we got this right here on you, you're going to come back in line. And what we're seeing with the music industry in Hollywood is the exact same thing. You want the keys of the kingdom, you want the good life, well, there's a price to pay. You are going to have to sell your soul literally, physically, to someone in this brotherhood to be welcomed in. And then, of course, part of that, again, is the sexual exploitation, because those guys now are in the group. They've got you on tape, sodomizing young boys and young girls and doing all kinds of things. I mean, we've heard, even murders being committed. I've come across in some of my research in the past, where some of these people, they actually want to have the privilege, they call it, of raping a child and killing the child. And they've got this stuff on tape as well. Now, what I anticipate happening here is they're going to keep it under wraps as much as they can, just like they did with Epstein. And eventually the attention span of the average person will go away to something else, and they're going to forget all about it. So they're going to see a lot of this stuff covered up, swept under the rug, and not all the full details are going to get out, but Allah is unveiling it piece by piece. That's how humanity needs to be woken up, in increments. The Quran was revealed in increments. Humanity must wake up slowly. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. People have been too hypnotized for far too long to have that kind of, big shift in the Overton window or shift in the paradigm of reality. They need to go there inch by inch. And I think Allah is doing that. We are just seeing the veil being lifted and seeing what a nasty, filthy place Hollywood is, what a nasty, filthy place the music industry is. And again, just the power of music. It can't be understated enough. If you go and look at the majority of criminals in this country are fans of rap music. What does rap promote? What has it promoted for the last 25 years? It has promoted nothing but criminality. And, just in sin, in zina, in materialism. And if someone's growing up from the age of 6 and 7, and that's all they're hearing in their ears is constant negativity, constant, violence and sin and filth, how are they going to behave? Now, a lot of people listen to it and stay responsible. It does happen. But that's not that's not the rule. That's the exception. I know firsthand when I grew up, I was a clean kid. I got good grades in school. When I got to be 13 or 14, I started engaging in listening to music that was promoting drugs and that type of lifestyle. And sure enough, what was I doing at that age after I started listening to that music? I was experimenting with drugs and living that lifestyle. I got out of it by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and many people do, but there are a lot of people who don't. And it's really something that we have to evaluate as an ummah. Monitoring what our kids are listening to and making sure we keep this filth out of our homes, because there was a story, if anyone's ever heard of it, the Pied Piper, and how he hypnotized the children with music and led them to their deaths to get the revenge on the parents. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The Pied Piper used music. Music has hypnotic control. The beats and everything is programmed to get you to feel certain moods, generate certain emotions. These people are the masters. Look who produces the music. Look at who the top producers are. Look at who the main figures in the hip-hop movement are behind the scenes, not the one you see on camera. And you're going to see the same exact people I was talking about earlier that we're talking about on a week-to-week basis. It's very, very dangerous. And this hopefully, again, will continue to wake more people up. It's a very, very loaded issue. I hope I addressed the question properly, but that's what I feel, about that. I think it's going to be covered up. But I do think it's going to be the start of something great, and that's a worldwide awakening to what's going on.
MashaAllah, I think you did a great job tonight in addressing all these issues.
How much time we have left?
I don't know. Couple more minutes. My Q&A is not till what 9:30. What time is it now? I can't see. I'm streaming.
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
Okay. Did you want to talk about anything else or what?
Well, yeah, I was going to mention something I read today, which again we talk about this political system in this country.
Okay.
We had some tax cuts on a bill, and I haven't read the whole bill. No one ever reads the whole bill. You don't have enough lawyers with you or time to fully decipher every aspect of the bill. They're going to put garbage in every bill, and that's just a given. But they have put together, the Trump administration, a bill which really was beneficial to the American people. I can't remember legislation like this being introduced in my lifetime. Moved tax on overtime. This would help tremendously. A lot of people I know where I work now and where I've worked in the past, they tell me, I really don't like overtime because the government just taxes so much of it. I'm working all these hours for basically nothing. And these are men out there trying to feed their families, and they're just getting their checks just flat by this evil taxation that's going on here. And this bill was going to remove that. This bill was going to also provide incentives for American cars to encourage us to buy things made domestically instead of continuing to contribute to foreign governments, keeping our money inside the country. There was about 8 points of good stuff that I read from in this bill, and every Democrat voted against it, every single one. And then it gets to the Senate, and they're talking about they're going to make sweeping changes to it. And my democracy video I did back in the election time, I covered this, and I talked about this as the cycle of manipulation, is that Trump will save face. He will say he's done his part. He released good legislation. His supporters are going to love him for this. They're going to sing his praises. But the legislation is going to go nowhere. It did pass the House because there's more Republicans in the House than Democrats. But now it gets to the Senate. They're going to slash so much of it, it'll be probably unrecognizable by the time it gets back. And things just stall and nothing gets done. And then the first 2 years of Trump's term will go by, and then they're going to rig the next election. And they're going to say, oh, well, the people are upset, nothing got done. And all of a sudden, the Democrats will take the House or the Senate back, and then everything will be blocked for the next 2 years. This is how they run the democracy game. Nothing good ever comes to us because this system is built in, they're all on the same team, to never allow it to come to that. This is always the election cycle. You go and you look at Trump's first term. Trump had both the House and the Senate, and you had the defectors that were voting against his legislation then, so it never passed. 2 years went by. What happens? The Democrats come in, there's a blue wave, and they come in, they take it back, and then everything gets blocked the final 2 years. And it just never ends, and people keep falling for the same thing. It's like insanity to keep falling for the same trap. You'll hear the conversations that people say, oh, I can't wait to the next election. We're going to vote out those Republicans who tried to slash this. And then when that happens, all the Democrats are going to win. And nothing is ever going to get done. Nothing ever gets done but what they want to get done. Anytime there's a pay raise for them, you are going to see it go up. Anytime there's something dirty or more money for Israel, it's going to pass. Anytime they wanted to give more money to Ukraine, it passed. So anytime you see stuff like that the American people are against, that does not benefit us in any way, it will pass. But once there's something in there and you say, oh man, this would actually be good, it will be blocked, delayed, stalled, shredded up, torn up, and start over again, where all the bad provisions will remain and the good ones will be gone. And this is the cycle, and why democracy has simply never worked. It's never going to work. It's a mind game. It's about whipping up tribal nature, us against them. We have to support our party no matter what. If they vote against what we want, we have to accept it because the other side will be way worse. And then people just keep voting for the same thing. Nothing ever gets better. But The Democrats obviously are fundamentally worse from an Islamic perspective. There's no debate on this. I mean, Democrats are horrible. Their core policies, I mean, we haven't heard much about the LGBTQ agenda, alhamdulillah, since Donald Trump got in there. That has at least been taken out of our lives. When Joe Biden was in there, they had Pride Month. They had a whole month to honor sin. I mean, you can imagine how far we've fallen, that we had an entire month dedicated to honoring sin. You know, should we have a month dedicated to murder, to theft, to all the good thieves out there in the world? I mean, what's next? I mean, in Canada, we even went farther under their leftist leadership, and they dedicated the entire summer, you know, to this. I mean, Joe Biden even went as far as to describe a gay man as being a courageous hero. I mean, that really made me almost want to spit the drink out of my mouth at the time. I mean, a courageous hero? A courageous hero is someone who fights valiantly to defend his land. A courageous hero is someone who runs in a building to get an old lady or to save a child. That's a courageous hero. A man mating with another man, so to speak, courageous hero. But you see where I'm going. It's like when you have those guys in there, you are going to be fed this stuff, beat over the head with it nonstop. So from my perspective, I know nothing's going to get done. I just feel that under Republican leadership, things won't be as bad for a little bit. Until the next Democratic regime gets in there, we go right back to the same thing. And we can, again, observe this in history. Bill Clinton, don't ask, don't tell. You know, that was his policy on homosexuality. You go back to the next time a Democrat got in, it was Obama. He ran on that premise. And then what did Obama do in his second term? He just went all out. It was gay everywhere, gay everything. And this is the first time we started hearing about transgenders. You go back and ask someone in 2009 if a man was really could be a woman, or is that transgender really a woman, or does he identify and all that language, people would have laughed at you. But just a few short years later, it became a part of the global conversation. And we were beat over the head with it for 4 years. In Obama's second term, he got gay marriage to be nationalized. Before that point, it was not. And then you had Trump for 4 years. We took that break again. And then Biden comes in and it's off to the races again. We get their own month. We start getting all the treatments they're wanting to give the children without their parents' knowledge. They're wanting to allow these crazy liberal women to take their young boys to these clinics and basically chemically castrate them, take away any chance that young boy will ever have of raising a family before he even knows how to drive, before he even knows how to write his name. He's already being injected with estrogen and hormone compounds to reduce his puberty, to get him to never be a man, how God made him. And we got, again, that stuff is starting to be phased out a little bit, and that's always a good thing. We have to see the silver lining that so far under Trump, it has been a lot better, you know, than it was. There's no doubt there. We are seeing less of this stuff, and it's going to come back. And I just don't really know where the next cycle will be, because I don't know how much further they can obviously push this. They are going to try as much as they can, but they pretty much pushed it under Biden as far as I thought they ever could do in such a short period of time. And now you see, again, voting against the interests of the hardworking Americans, because the Democrats want a world like the real goal of the Zionists, where you have a tiny fraction of people who own everything, and then you have everybody else on the bottom with absolutely nothing. They want the middle class eradicated and gone, and they're going to do that if we don't stop them. And they're well on the way of doing that. I mean, the middle class now is in the $100,000 earning range. I mean, you can't even feed a family comfortably on $80,000 or $75,000 like you used to. So you're going to continue to see more and more of that. Does anyone have any other questions?